If you're based in the EU and running an e-shop like a Shopify store, I'll show you how to collect the VAT the right way and how to use the EU's OSS scheme to pay the VAT to different European tax authorities. Let's suppose you're in Greece and you have an online store. When you sell your products, you collect a 24% VAT when the customer pays at checkout. But let's say you have a customer from Spain who buys from your website. What VAT are you going to charge? The VAT of Greece, 24%, or the VAT of Spain, 21%? And also, which tax authorities are you going to give this money to? To the Greek tax authorities or the Spanish tax authority? Let's start with the main principle. VAT is a consumption tax. It's paid by the final individual consumer. That's why businesses in Europe don't pay VAT when they buy B2B products or services. Or if they pay it, they get it back. Why? Because VAT is a consumption tax, paid by the final consumer. You, as a business, have the obligation to collect the tax and then give it to the tax authorities. So you are just the middle person. You take it from the consumer and you give it to the government. Another principle is that because the VAT is a consumption tax, it follows the rules of the place where consumption happens. There are some exceptions, but the principal idea is that it follows the rules of the place where consumption happens. What does this mean? Let's take an example. Let's take the example of someone named Kostas. Like you, Kostas also lives in Greece, and he buys shoes from your e-commerce store in Greece. So Kostas buys the shoes in Greece, he wears the shoes in Greece, and he paid 24% VAT to you in Greece. And you, as the owner of the online store, you go to the tax authorities in Greece and you give them the 24% VAT that Kostas paid for the shoes. You already know this, right? Now, let's take an example of Donald. Donald lives in the USA. Donald goes to Greece for vacations, and he buys shoes from your e-commerce store in Greece. Donald doesn't wear the shoes in Greece. He puts them in the suitcase to take them back to the United States. Will Donald pay the 24% VAT? The answer is no, he will not. Technically, he might pay it and then get it back at the airport, but the principle is that Donald will not pay Greece's VAT. Now that we understand how the main VAT principle works, let's see what happens to Pedro from Spain. Pedro goes onto your online store, buys shoes from you, and you ship the shoes to Spain. So, your online store is in Greece, right? Will Pedro from Spain pay Greece's 24% VAT, Spain's 21% VAT, or will he not pay VAT at all? Per main principle, you need to collect the 21% VAT of Spain. So Pedro pays 21% VAT to you, and you go to the tax authorities of Spain and you give them the VAT that Pedro paid you. And it doesn't matter that your e-commerce store is in Greece. And how you're going to do this? Well, you need to register with the tax authorities of Spain and give them the money. And then you need to do the same if you have a customer from Luxembourg, Belgium, France, Portugal, Denmark, etc. Can you imagine how hard this would be for you, for a small business? Because this is so difficult for a small business, for someone who has a small Shopify store on the internet, the EU tried to make this simpler. And the EU made this simpler by doing two things. First, the EU created the 10,000 euros rule. What is the 10,000 euros rule? Let's go back to our example with Pedro from Spain. You have the e-shop, you sell shoes, and Pedro buys shoes from you for 100 euros. And you ship them to Spain. The EU allows you to choose what to do with the VAT. Option 1, you can choose to pay the 21% VAT to the Spain's tax authorities. This is quite hard for a small business to do. Option 2, You can have Pedro pay the Greece's 24% VAT, and you give this VAT money to your tax authorities in Greece. Simple, right? But you can only do this for sales to customers in other EU countries of up to 10,000 euros annually. So let's suppose you have customers from other European countries like Spain, Luxembourg, Belgium, and Italy. You ship shoes and you make revenue 9,000 euros a year. What do? The simple thing. You collect Greece's 24% VAT and you give it to the tax authorities of Greece. But once you pass the 10,000 euros annual threshold, you then need to start collecting the local VAT tax of the consumer's country. So in a given year, if you had sales of 10,100 euros and the last sale for 100 euros was for Pedro from Spain, then you need to collect Spain's 21% VAT from Pedro and give it to the Spanish authorities. You register in Spain and you give it to the tax authorities of Spain. That's how the 10,000 euros rule works. But if your business in Greece is growing and your online store has customers buying your shoes from many European countries, and you make sales of more than 10,000 euros a year, then you need to go to all these European countries, register, and pay the VAT that you collected from their residents. Can you imagine how hard this would be for you as an online store owner? This is the reason the EU made what is called the One-Stop Shop Scheme, or OSS. So this is the second thing that the European Union did to help small business owners like you who have a small Shopify store on the internet. And in our example, this is called the Union OSS. So what is the Union OSS? Instead of going to all EU national tax authorities where you have customers to register, you can register one time for the OSS. There you give the VAT tax that you collected per customer per country. For example, Pedro bought shoes from your online store for 100 euros. Pedro pays you Spain's VAT. You go online to the Union OSS portal, you report what you sold to Spain for 100 euros and that you collected 21% Spain's VAT, you pay this money and you are done. And if you have one sale in Spain, one sale in Luxembourg, instead of going to register with their national tax authorities, you just pay these countries through one portal, through the OSS. In this video, we explained the basic things of how this works. If you want more information about EU VAT and the OSS, click on the link below and find an article that I published on this topic on the website EuroFounders.org. Thanks for watching, bye bye.